So, the news is just finished on your television, your radio, your news feed, and like it so often is these days, it was depressing. A devastating climatic event in a near or far corner of the world. A senseless hit-and-run verdict that leaves you numb. Yet another denial of systemic racism by a politician who knows how much it's going to cost him to say otherwise. COVID numbers that signal a lengthening tunnel before we get to see the light at the end of it. And all of that, if you were watching TV, interspersed with ads telling you that your fridge isn't sexy enough, that your basic groceries aren't good enough or as good as some pre-boxed, read expensive gourmet meal service, and that you really should have whiter teeth and better curves. What do you do with all of that landing on your shoulders? You can feel your heart aching, you can feel your head spinning and your soul starving, your gut, your feet, your hands, they need you to get away, to get out, to get up. Where do you go? Is there a place that you go to get away from this sick and sickening so-called civilization? And who do you listen to? Whose voice or sound or silence is medicine, is wisdom for you? Now, I know for some, hands up here, it's pulling out the yeast and the flour and the apron and the pots to create some nourishment for body that salves the soul. Maybe you're one of those that reaches for keys or strings or a bow or a recording to give some musical voice to your mute despair. Does your inner wisdom write itself to consciousness flowing with ink across a paper or with a brush on canvas? For some, it's the lakeshore that calls. Sunlight or rain dancing on the small waves that lap at the roots of a favorite tree. For some, it's the smell of turned soil and dirt-crusted fingertips pinching the spent flowers and that ancient alchemy of compost that settles the fretting of the present into this longer, gentle season. For some, the dog's ears prick up at the silent scream of your soul, and she comes wagging her tail to suggest a walk in the forest. Some of you are probably sitting there right now with the cat kneading your knees, purring you to some piece of body, mind. Perhaps it's this ancient lap of a tree into which you curl fetal until you are ready to be reborn into the world again. Does your mortal body and its urgency crave the slip of wet pebbles through your fingers that were millennia in the making to slow your rush? Or is it the walk onto the ridge so that you can shrink into a rightful human smallness against those towering storm clouds while a vast prairie wind dries the tears at the edges of your eyes? However fearfully and wonderfully we, God's human creatures, are made, one thing is for certain, that in times of crisis, in times of pain, in times of loss, and even in times of immense joy, we humans are seekers after wisdom, and we are makers of meaning. We are not fully who we're meant to be without satisfying this fully embodied spiritual desire to rise above and sink beneath and delve as fully as possible into the mystery of I, we, all, the mystery of here, now, when. It is that deep, deep human need to seek wisdom that pushes us when the chips are down to look beyond ourselves as individuals and even as a species, to seek out even more ancient wisdom keepers. Yet to be utterly frank, we of the Judeo-Christian tradition in those corners of the globe, as I said earlier, that are so influenced by Platonism and Enlightenment and the scientific revolution, we are actually pretty lousy at doing that. And partly it's our fault, the church. Somehow the church has got us to buy into the lie that doctrinally orthodox human religious rituals or texts or prayers are somehow the gold standard for spiritual wisdom. And that all of those practices that I just named that I know resonated with so many of you are somehow not valid or valid enough to count. On behalf of the church, I'm sorry. It's time we got over that nervousness and truly believed what the scriptures are pointing to, that God, the loving creator and embracer of an eternally unfolding, interconnected creation, is way bigger than any single human religious quest, and that God's wisdom is to be found in and between and above and beyond and behind absolutely everything. We just need to learn to look, to seek, and to find and love and cherish these wisdom-seeking ways. Now, I've been thoroughly mind-blown in the last couple of days by reading a new book that came out earlier this summer by Jeremy Lent called The Web of Meaning. In this book, he integrates ancient wisdom from Taoism, Buddhism, and indigenous traditions from around the globe, along with neuroscience, evolutionary biology, and all of the wisdom of the most recent decades of science to show how deeply, at the level of wisdom, the level of being and meaning, we all creatures are connected. Along the way, he thoroughly debunks the myth that we humans are Earth's only intelligent or emotional beings. And I'm here to tell you that far from that undermining my faith in God's dream for all creation and my place within it, this integrated worldview has magnified it exponentially. So I'm going to share with you what I'm going to call the gospel according to slime mold. There you see it. Just under 4 billion years ago, when life began to emerge from the primordial matter of our planet, it did so in the form of single-celled organisms. Now, evolutionary biologists and philosophers are all unanimous in stating that what every cell on Earth has in common is this, that it is a living entity acting purposefully to maintain and propagate its life. Slime mold is microscopic. What you're seeing there is a universe of slime mold. But slime mold is one such single cellular living being. And it does, as all living things do, it seeks to live and thrive. But, as you can see from the image, it does so cooperatively. They live together. And I'm quoting here from Lent's book. He says, at a certain phase in their life cycle, they grow this network of tube-like structures called pseudopodia, which they use to crawl around looking for food. And when they find multiple food sources, they adapt their collective shape to access this food in the most efficient way possible. And this is where their virtuosity takes center stage. Because scientists working with this single cellular organism have shown that they work together to find the shortest route between two food sources when you put them into a maze. And there's more. These cooperative living beings are better at navigational design than humans are. So these scientists have used these little micro maps of human cities and have shown repeatedly that slime mold creates better routes between and across cities than we have done. That's ancient wisdom, about 4 billion years old. When you go outside and watch a flock of starlings, or maybe you've seen a school of fish turn to the light or away from danger. When you start to discover that the root systems of a forest are a complex internet communicating wisdom for the forest's thriving. When we start to encounter creation around us slowly enough to learn the names of things, when we're prepared to stop our busyness long enough to watch a spider mend her web or guard her egg sac. Long ago, 4 billion years ago, and ever since, our ancestors have spoken to us in many and various ways. How many ways? Because long ago, at Earth's birthing, God's wisdom was woven into a single cell, and from that single cell it has been passed down through every living creature to us, to bequeath to our grandchildren's children. Now, if only we, as a species, got over ourselves long enough to learn this ancient wisdom and what it tells us about ourselves. Consider the slime mold. We too are made to be in interdependent communities that purposely support the flourishing of life. All life. That's all. Amen.